Note, ma'am. Then
Okay.
you can start. Okay. Good evening, everyone. We welcome you all to today's webinar, Women, Peace, and Gender Concern. I welcome Professor Asha Hans, resource person for today's webinar. Few words about Professor Asha Hans. She is executive committee member of IAWS and president of Sensitivity and former professor of political science and founder director School of Women's Studies, Utkal University. Co-chair Pakistan India People's Forum for Peace and Security. Um, Madam's research area of interest is gender, human security, dialogue and mediation, peace education and all. Once again, I thank you all for joining us today. I request participant to post question in chat box or else wait for question and answer session. Now I request Professor Asha Hans to take over the session. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be with all of you this evening and especially to discuss an issue which is so very important today globally because we seem to see that there is a lot of militarization across the globe where people are concerned. This is also an important year because last year we had not only the pandemic striking us, but we had so many other um, celebrations that we should have been doing but did not do. One of these was that it was the 75th year of the United Nations, which, as you know, is a body which deals with peace and security. It is also the 25th year of the Beijing Platform for Action. The Beijing conference took place in 1995 and was one of the most important women's conferences that came into being, and this was the 25th year. There was another very important conference which very few people know, but which forms the paradigm of women, peace, and security. And that is UN Security Council Resolution 1325. In fact, I have a friend from Mumbai University who had come to one of these meetings with me when the person who started this, Ambassador Anwarul Chowdhury, was in India. And she said that when she went to the registrar to ask for leave, and he asked her if this was her flight number. So, the amount of knowledge that is there on peace and security is so limited across the globe. And especially in India, since we have not signed the treaty, there is very little knowledge on the issue itself. But more important to today's talk is a book that came out in 1985, a book called Sexism and Militarism. This book was written by Professor Betty Reardon, who is today known as the mother of peace education. It was this book which started a dialogue globally on women and militarism and peace. And going from militarism and sexism, which she said showed the discrimination between men and women during the war, we came to a place where we are today talking about peace, how she is known as the mother of peace education. So, where sexism and militarism is concerned, this combination has been seen across the globe. It is in every country that is there, or I would say that rather in most countries. There have been many writers on women, peace, and security in India, across the globe. One of the most famous, of course, is Cynthia Enloe, who writes very weird titles she gives to her books. The first book that she wrote, it was called Bananas, Beaches, Bananas, Beaches, and Bases. Uh, these are issues that have come out in peace because where countries are called, many countries in Latin America were called banana republics because they had very little democracy, they had very little people who believed in peace. But there was also the issue of bases. Across the globe, there have been innumerable amount of bases. These are during the Second World War, which was set up, whether it was in Japan or whether it was even in, at one time, even in India. There have been bases set up by large powers which take over ports and turn them into military camps, and where there has been a lot of sexism, and where women have been during the wartime, and even after the war, the Japanese war we finished in 1945 when the Second World War was concerned, but the Japanese bases are still there with the United States. So it is American territory because it is an American base, and this is where women who go in for prostitution and other for trade, etc., or to sell things, have been there has been a lot of sexual abuse of these women. So that has been across the globe by women that these things must stop. And this was one of the first books that Cynthia Enloe wrote. She wrote a number of other ones. The last one that came was on patriarchy. But there were other women like Cynthia Coburn, who just died last year, or maybe it was year before last. She wrote a lot on networking amongst women for peace, whether it was Cyprus, it was Ireland. She covered all these. So there has been a lot of work that has been done on women, peace, and security. In India, you have Urvashi Batalia was written on Kashmir. A lot of work has been done on women's voices and silences that are there. Rita Manchanda has written some. On peace, Swarna Rajgopalan has been one of the persons who has written with me on peace issues. And there is a rising star in South Asia, Sumita Basu, who works in the South Asia University and who has started to write a huge amount of documentation that he has done on Security Council Resolution 1325, and the reason why many countries who join it and many countries who stay out of it. Now, most of people, when they are asked what is gender, you would say that it is something between men and women, that there is a differentiation, that it is a binary issue. Gender is not a binary issue. It is not a relationship between men and women. It is much more than that. Today, it is when we write about gender, we don't write about only men and women. There are also non-conforming people, people who don't agree to be identified as men or women. There are also intersectionalities. I'm sure most of you know that there are women who are men of caste, of religion, of different ethnicities. So you cannot have one woman who is now has a different religion or who has a different caste. You cannot make them equal. They have different issues, they have different specific problems that are there. And even where peace and security are concerned, these issues have come about very, very much on the top. And we have to agree that there is a diversity which we need to recognize, not only in our nation, but even in our writings. But why do we talk about women and gender and peace? If gender is a broad thematic area, then why are we talking about it and why are we talking about women? Because right through the ages, right through history, every war that has been, we today don't call it a war between India and Pakistan or between Bangladesh and or between Myanmar or some other country. What we call that it is a war system. It is a system which supports war. It is a system which provides the money. It is a system which has what Enloe at one time said, that it cannot exist unless there is an ideology. It is an idea. It is something that we agree to it or we don't agree to it. So where war and peace are concerned, these are ideologies that we agree to, and these are ideologies that we pick up. Now, if during a war, what happens, whether there was one of the, I think, my childhood memories is my parents came from Pakistan. We migrated from there during our independence, and they had homes there. They came here, and the stories of the partition have been a shame where women are concerned. One of the books that was earliest book that was written was by Kamla Bhasin Adituman, and on boundaries, borders and boundaries. And they documented women's experiences during the partition. These are experiences where women were shamed by only by if they could be raped, then it was the shame, the humiliation. And there were many people who were crossing borders or who were staying there. And there were who had dumped their women into the wells and killed them rather than be caught by the enemy. And this doesn't happen here only. It did not happen during partition. It has happened in Bosnia, and it has happened in Rwanda, and it's happening all over the globe even now. So these are things that happen, that women are the center point of any dispute that takes place. So what do people do in any war? They want to protect women. But when you protect, what has happened in Afghanistan, for instance, you will see protection meant that girls were protected, so they would stay within the house, they would wear veils, they would not have education. Girls' education in Afghanistan was stopped because there was a war. Afghanistan went to war many, many years ago. It has been under a conflict zone with both Russia and the United States fighting over it. So women usually lose autonomy and control over themselves and their bodies. That is the central key point of a war and peace are concerned. Now, any conflict that is there has huge amount of impact. The most important impact, of course, that many people have tried to look at is the economic impact. How much money goes into wars? How much money is left over then for other things? If you look at the amount of weapon that the United States has, or Russia, you will see one of the reasons for the downfall of the Soviet Union has been the large amount of armaments that they had, and the money that went into it. So it always, that is one, the socio-economic and structural changes that take place where people are concerned. There is a loss of livelihood, and there is what is called a feminization of agriculture. When men go to fight wars, women are left behind to look after the farms. And that is happening even now when migrants go, and they go from, for example, in Odisha, where I come from, there's a large amount of migration that has taken place. Now, that migration means that women are left behind to look at the agriculture. They also have children to take care of. They have old people to take care of. So these kind of things also happen during war. That during war, men go and women are left behind to carry out all the work that is there. But the central point, of course, is that in war, sexual violence against women is the highest amount that has always been looked upon, where women are concerned as one of the reasons why war should not take place, that the war system should go, that it is time that we dealt away with it. But if but that doesn't mean that women don't join the war. There are many combatants who are women. In for example, I remember I went to Nepal for one of the peace negotiations that were taking place between the Maoists and between the government of that time. And one third of the women we found were the Maoists who were leading the struggle against the government. So women went as combatants, whether it was there. Even in India, if you look at the Naxals, you will see that a large number of women who have joined the Naxal stream. And these are things that have happened in many countries where women joined the military, the armies. For example, in Israel, Israel is one of the earliest countries to agree to include women. It's countries like India which came up much later. But Does that mean that women combatants have a good time or that they are there to earn money? I remember one of the first studies that I did was on Sri Lanka, when the war was taking place in Sri Lanka, the civil conflict between Tamils and the Sinhalas. At that time, the women, many women had joined especially when the IPKF went, many women joined the war, both as government in the government armies and otherwise also as what you would call now freedom fighters or terrorists, whatever you want to call it. But this meant that these women combatants faced a huge amount of problems within the armies that they joined for peace. And these armies, the men went had the guns, but initially the women were the ones who cooked and who looked after the camps. This is not the case now, where women are now joining in a higher level of the armed forces. But then what does peace mean? There are no where armies are concerned, where armed wars are concerned, external ones, you can count on your fingers between India and Pakistan. You can count like on your fingers what India had with China, or between Japan and Russia. But what is more is increasing is the wars inside the countries. It is the conflicts that are within the nation state, between people, between ethnicities, between groups who are there. So, this kind of conflict is part of a war system. The war system is not 90% of the conflicts now are within countries. So, you will see in Afghanistan, you are seeing now in Myanmar what is happening. You have seen that in Sri Lanka, you have seen that in Bosnia, Kosovo, Albania. You are seeing in Syria, in Iraq. Many of these are internal wars. Many of them, like Syria and Iraq, also are there. Or Afghanistan took place because the external forces that participated in the beginning of the war were something that they were looking for was resources. And in most cases, it was oil that what they were looking for. So there are many ways of looking at wars. You look at it from the side of the economic part. You look at it, the structural social changes that it creates, and makes women as second-class citizens. There is also the wars. Most people, what do they want in a war? They want a democracy to come out of it. They want democratization in many, many cases. In many cases, like Hitler, in many other countries where wars have taken place, it is because some army, some ideology wants to win. So it's not an easy thing to look at war and peace. Women are supposed to be protected, but then it is a 10-year-old child who is told that you are now the head of the family because your father is dead or he's gone to the war and you have to look after the family. So these kind of things happen in war situations where children take over the mantle of their parents, of their fathers, and become the next generation of warriors. One major issue that has taken place and which has between war and peace is that of refugees. In any kind of war, it is either the refugees or what you would call the IDPs. In the partition, which is the largest movement in the world, we were called displaced people. Displaced people also happen when there are dams, but displacement and refugees also take place in wars. If you look at the Myanmar war, for many years in India, in Bangladesh, you will see the Rohingya refugees who are there. You have seen the Tibetans in your towns. Every town that you go, you will see Tibetans. Tibetans are not Indian citizens. They have refused Indian citizenship. They are refugees. They are waiting for the Chinese to vacate Tibet so they can go back. So India has been very open to refugees at one time. We had the Chakmas, we had the Tamils from Sri Lanka. So all these were part of the wars, the spillovers that took place. You see huge amount of Afghans in Pakistan, millions of them. Now, what do women do? Women, on the whole, um, they have their own initiatives. When I was introduced, it was said that the I was the co-chair of the Pakistan India People's Forum for Peace and Democracy. That has been there since 1995. And one of the things that we do is interaction between women across borders. There have been times when women have crossed over from India to Pakistan, from India to Bangladesh in buses, as they want to, when they want to show that what they're looking for is peace between these two countries. There is something called WIPSA, the Women and Peace Security Initiative, which ran these buses and which saw to it that where women are concerned, both countries could interact with each other. There are women also, for like Asma Jahangir, who died a couple of years ago, and who was a great friend of India, and who did everything in that she could do to stop the conflict between India and Pakistan. In the same way, there are women like Kamla Bhasin, etc., or Saida Hamid, who spend all their time looking where peace is concerned in South Asia. There are also writers like I lost a friend a couple of uh, a few maybe a week or two ago, Malti Alves, who wrote on Sri Lanka and on the wars that is in Sri Lanka. Now, she wrote something which became very important and very famous in her writings, and that was what is called the mothers during each war, in whether it was in Palestine or whether it was in Latin America and Guatemala and El Salvador and even in Sri Lanka. The mothers of children who went to war um, um, grouped themselves in solidarity to fight that war. They said, we don't want war, we want peace. So the mothers became very important. But finally, it was the state which took over even the mothers' initiatives to and said, co-opted them that these are the mothers of our children and our children are patriots. So war and peace are something that becomes interlinked. The Mirapais in the northeast, for example, in Manipur, the Naga mothers who are there fighting for their sons and for peace and solidarity. These are things that have been there for a long time. But in none of the peace negotiations, whether it was in Nagaland or whether it's in Sri Lanka, even where mothers were present, none of them were included in any of the peace negotiations, even between Nagaland and India when peace negotiations were going on. Only one woman, Tishri, who joined the true track diplomacy that took place, but no one else did. Now, I'll come to one of the final issues that I will discuss is that 1325, which I said was a Security Council resolution. In writing or opening the book that I wrote on 1325, in an article recently, I rewrote that chapter. And I wrote that 20 years ago, the Security Council, in one of its rare actions, agreed unanimously to pass resolutions 1325 on women, peace, and security. For 20 years, many nations have signed it, others rejected it, but most of them have not acted in the spirit it was founded. I was there at one of the negotiations of 1325, and this was the first resolution which went into the Security Council, which is a body that looks at peace and security. It's not the General Assembly. And the women who had gone there, and this was a resolution that was passed unanimously by all the countries, and that means even the permanent members of the Security Council. That had never happened before. This was the first time it happened. But it has not worked because there are 86 countries who have signed the resolution, including India has not signed it, because they felt that Security Council was not the right place and it should have been the General Assembly. Peace is peace. And if Security Council makes war in Iraq or in Syria, why should not the Security Council try to make peace? In 1325, there are three pillars. It talks about women, peace, and security, of protection, participation, and prevention, and also relief and rehabilitation. But these are the three things. Hardeep Singh, who was the Indian ambassador in the United Nations, while talking about 1325, which India has supported in the Security Council, said that there are three other things that need looking into, and that is economic recovery, social cohesion, and political legitimacy. So India, as one of the things that it did, is said that we will not join 1325, but we will send up a police force to Liberia, which was at war. The peacekeeping forces that are set by the United Nations, India sent one to Liberia, which was the first all-women police force that was sent to bring about peace in Liberia, which had been where there had been a war for so long. Now, India has this year joined the Security Council, and many of us who work on the area of peace hope that India will today, if not sign the resolution, would at least create that atmosphere within the Security Council where countries now talk more about peace. There are national plans which are made by each country under 1325. India has not made that, but it has agreed to a CEDAW recommendation which talked of the same thing. So it does not matter whether you sign 1325 or no. It is a fact that one thing that we need to do from the grassroots level up is that we need to talk much more about peace. Even during COVID-19, I wrote a small blog for Prajna and Viswana Rajgopalan, and I was looking at the language that was being used in COVID-19 and the language that talked about warriors, about war, the language of militarism, the language of violence. When you have a situation of you talk about militarization, it goes deep into society, and that is something that we need to do away with. We don't want militarization to come within the social structures. We don't want, we want peace within society. We don't want policemen beating up people, and we don't want people beating up people. That creates a kind of environment where instead of getting a better economy, instead of getting a peaceful schooling, what we do, most of our energy goes into war and stopping it. There is racism, there is xenophobia. All these are part of militarization. I'll end up by saying that where globally militarization is so very high at the moment, we have looked at imagery in all our writings, in all our thinking. I was listening to a man called Pawar from Bombay at a recent meeting, and he said that there was a dam being built in somewhere in Maharashtra, and when the dam there was a loud sound. Everyone said they talked about Shivaji and started to say that he was such a great person, though that was not the right time to say. We were talking about development, but development and militarization are getting together to such an age that we are talking not only we have imagery from history, from the Mahabharata, you look at or the Ramayana, to Shivaji, or you come today, the icons are militaristic. One of the best things that I have done in the last few years is that when you have India Pakistan matches of cricket, most of you we go there and we shout for pro India, pro Pakistan. when the war takes place on the borders, even when there are just shelling, you will see in the media, India's media says that we won, and Pakistan media says that we won. These are imageries. These are war icons. They do not give us anything. Then what do we as teachers, we as students, what can we do? I would like to listen to you to tell me what is that you as a student would like to do for peace? How would you do it? Would you write a term paper? Or would you? Saw a recent movie. There are lots of movies on peace between India and Pakistan, and some of them are an abduction that take place. But this was a very sad movie, which was about a woman who married and went to Pakistan, lost her husband, and she wanted to come back to India, but India wouldn't take her and Pakistan wouldn't send her. So she declared herself as dead. Only then she move back. So we should not reach the ultimatum. We do not get visas to each other's countries. It's difficult to go. So this is like a pandemic all the time. And this is something that we need to do away with. The language of violence, the writings of violence, the icons that we build up. And it will be good to listen to what you have to say. That what would you do if you were given a place in the external affairs ministry, or you had a parliament in your college? What would you do as if you wanted to create uh, a system of peace? I stop here. I would like to see what you have to say, and uh, not only questions, but I want to know what you would like to do practically. That is something that it would be good to hear. Is there anyone who wants to come and say, do you want to write a term paper?
Thank you, Asha, for such a wonderful delivery. I think now students will definitely come out with their suggestions. Students, please. I'm Manimeklai here. I struggled a lot to get the network connected, so I joined
Okay.
around 5:20 or 25 only. So I missed a lot. Mm. So now Asha is expecting the participants. Please,
Yeah.
students, you have a role to play, and it is your turn in future to ensure peace. So there are our role models already. Women are there, so and women study students all the more have more responsibility because of the sensitivity you have gained. So please come out with your own suggestions, which Asha was asking. I think Ilay Kumar, you can also reflect. Ilay Kumar is the one who is hosting this from Revamp.
Yeah, sorry, ma'am. I was
You have
actually
to ask
traveling.
questions, but
You're
you can
traveling.
say what
Okay.
you want to do.
Yeah, that is what I'm also
Yeah.
asking. A question or answering your thing. So how best you can,
Yeah,
yeah, not just Ilay Kumar, anybody. Yeah. Yeah. Students, please. Having listened to the deliberation, let us now reflect as to how what is our social responsibility
Even
in
within
ensuring.
the college, within your clubs that are there, that you play, when you participate in matches that are there, that is where peace comes in. We're talking about peace at the grassroots level, between where we are concerned, our relationship with each other. If I'm fighting with Mani Maglay all the time, we're not going to get anything done. There is, we need to do something better than that.
Yeah. Hello, ma'am. I would like to reflect on your talk. Am I audible?
Yes, yes. Yes, you are audible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. I was just watching a documentary which has been, part of research done by R4D. It has been funded by Switzerland. So where they were dealing with five nation states, which is in like Sri Lanka, Guatemala, Nigeria, and then Switzerland. So I could able to experience the post-war, the situation is different, and then the like when they're coming together to climb the rights, that time they're somehow including women into their roles. But the post-war, it is totally different, and when we look through the gender lens or the reducing, kind of gender inequality in that point of view, it's totally like a worse situation. I can say that, in Guatemala, women were not allowed to even do agriculture. But when the men were arrested, when they were jailed, or when they were ran away to the forest by the state militancy, the women were the one who is taking care of agriculture. But when the peace accord has been signed, then the role of women has been taken by men, and they were not allowing them. So similarly, in Nigeria, the women were getting 30% reservation to political participation, but the application form has been neglected by the authorities, election authorities. So how can we look at it like after the war? No? After that, what will happen? Like what we have to do exactly? That's my question.
Yeah, I know that in most countries across the globe, especially in El Salvador, Guatemala, all those countries where there have been a lot of conflict at the grassroots level, women, if you uh, what the Beijing Declaration did in that case was that they asked for women's equality. There can be no peace without women's equality. And in that case, what you were saying is so right, that this is something that should be a major aim. You cannot have peace if you don't look at what COVID did. The amount of domestic violence it created within the household, women, because they were locked up with their own perpetrators. So what happened was that the domestic violence increased nearly twofold, threefold. So these kind of things are something that we need to think about. And that happens starts at home. The woman who's sitting next to you in your classroom, how much do you give her the credibility of equality, or how much it's not only a structural change. I'm sure Manimekla will also tell you that it is not that by getting it under the law that we get all those rights. Those rights have to have been fought for, and can only come if all of us agree to it. You all have to agree that you are all equal. Otherwise, it will never come about.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Students was asking about the kind of the whatever the kind of activity you would take up there at the campus level or among the collectives. You're all in collectives also, I know. So whatever you already done also you can share, and whatever you have in the pipeline, please do share. And yeah.
Ma'am, Professor Manimegalai and Professor Hans, hello. My name is Hari, and I am just about to join the PhD program at Bharatidasan University, PhD in Women's Studies. So, like Professor Hans, you rightly pointed out, I genuinely feel that there has to be a sensitization right from the very beginning about gender equality, and these sorts of very basic things. And such a very basic thing that, washing clothes or washing or just any vessel is not based on gender. Anybody can do that. So that I believe that could first start by providing a good quality sexuality education for children from primary education at school. Whilst that being one thing, I have a question as well, because one of my friends, she has initiated this, bill in the Australian Parliament regarding uh, the refugees in from Bangladesh when they're migrating to India, and they are being subjected to gender and sexual violence by the military, whether it is in Myanmar or whether it is in India. They are being subjected to this. However, this is not getting I mean, they are not being penalized for it. And there's this sort of how does India play into this? Will India be able to pressurize them to penalize these officials, because they belong to the Indian government, yet they do involve in these sorts of activities which are very, very bad. And how does you know the Indian government look into it? So that's sort of was my question.
I think, would anyone else want to answer that? Because, it's something that concerns all of us. It's not only the Indian government. If the Indian government doesn't do it, then it is also our duty to highlight it and say that this is what should be done and what is right. I think this is where students can play an important role, because we have to, our understanding has to come from here, that we are all equal, that where violence is concerned doesn't pay. And I think one of the reasons uh, many of you have talked about, I'm sure, about the death penalty. And this is another thing that happens where inequality is concerned. Death penalty does not stop violence. So if you ask the government to do it once, they might do it now, they will not do it again. So you have to bring about a system where there is a thinking of equality, where there is a thinking of non-violence. And these things have to be part of a social structure. But if we talk even during the COVID about war, then what can we tell the government that this is what you do? It is our duty to say, it is, we should set these things right. But at the same time, everyone has to think in that way. And the government has to record. There's no, the people who are, even when rapes are taking across the country, not only here, across the globe, and especially during war and peace, who is punished? No one is punished. There were war crime tribunals after Bosnia. One person got punished. And in Bosnia, the Serbs had raped thousands and thousands of Muslim women from Bosnia. In between the Rwanda, among the Tutsis and Hutus, there was so much of sexual violence. But who stopped it? It did not go. We have to create a system. We have to of our. That is why when I began with it, I said it is an idea, an ideology. We have to think that way. We have to. Then only will we be able to act that way. Our thoughts, our writing. Write a term paper. Do a dissertation on it. If that is what you saw, Hari, you should write on it. Write an article on it. Right? If you don't have to write an article, write a blog. or just even if you put it on Instagram or Twitter, few lines, that creates a system and where people start to rethink and say that, okay, this is right what he's saying.
You can talk now. Well, I am Ganapati, who have just now made an entry into the back. In Tamil Nadu, the government has been promoting, as in also in other parts of the country, a massive campaign to construct toilets and stop open defecation. Under this program, there are self-help groups, and in recent years, they have also been told not just about open defecation, but also about water scarcity and also the need for gender equity and equality. So this is one method by which rural people are able to, active rural women are able to understand what is happening in other villages. And all of them are connected with a computer, and every week the programs are monitored and the reports are being sent to the head office also. And they are also good work done by any village is always appreciated by form of a appreciation letter or an incentive. So this is one method in which Tamil Nadu has done so far. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you for joining here in this group. I've been listening, and yesterday I happened to be with the college here. It's a famous college, St. Joseph's College, where our past president was also had also studied. And and at the end of the lecture, it was coming from the male faculty colleagues that there has been change, and it is all now the men are really controlled by the women as daughters. The father has to be obliging, and as husband to the wife, and as a son to mother. So this is what he was talking yesterday. So I was wondering, is it really happening? The equation is not changing like that, but historically you have been facing the patriarchal forces operating in every context, pushing the women down and not able to really contribute to whatever the area in which they wanted to. But unfortunately, among the elite, educated elite, and that too teachers are teaching history, are subscribing to these views, and he never agreed to whatever I spoke and I shared on the issues of gender. So this is quite dangerous for us, as we are moving towards, as now just now that Ganapati sir was also making a point that the grassroots mobilization is taking place to ensure better sanitation, and but at the same time there is a large gap of understanding what is happening in the reality, the ground realities, and what is being dwelt there in the classrooms. So if the teachers themselves subscribes to these views, how best they will be disseminating to students. This is my worry. And so there are a long way to go in terms of even the topic as such, this women peace and the concerns haven't been much dealt in the day-to-day life by all the researchers. It is still a neglected area, I should say. So there is a way, maybe like Asha is continuously doing and working on this area, and also their whoever the group contributing to literature. So there is a need to also introduce this to the classroom, and that is what we have also dealt there in the national convention, that the classrooms should bring all these the huge body of literature being contributed by the women's movements, and particularly this is one of the areas. And you were talking about 1325, how the Security Council is also insisting on this, and what is the gap, etc. So I'm afraid how all these could be addressed. You have been on technology development, and you bring people to deliberate on various issues, but the basic issues of these kind of issues of gender values, gender norms, the binding, the social structure, the patriarchy, and all these are not much understood because even still it is patriarchal in perspective, the teaching, the curriculum itself. So it is again, I underline that the youngsters who are at least committed and sensitive towards dealing with the issues should take the lead to influence the campus, wherein, as right, and Asha points out rightly, that you have to do at least a dissertation or a term paper or form a collective and have a study circle discussing. Even this is online happening, so this is what we have to also do, that we have got a gender study circle which will be meeting every Wednesday, where all these kind of issues used to be discussed for all the students, not just one student. But now it is not operative because of the COVID and other issues, so we have to resume it. So I think there is a moral responsibility for everyone to understand, I mean, take it forward to make the society gender sensitive. And as Asha was pointing out, the intersectionalities also, it is not just gender alone is the issue. You also have the whole lot of the other social institutions defining the roles of individuals who are divided and diverse across a different culture, caste, class, region, religion, etc. So this is the observation I would like to, but there is a responsibility for every individual to commit towards working to ensure peace and also address the issues of gender concerns.
You don't have to do big things. We can
Yeah.
begin at home. We can begin with our friends.
Yes.
Every small thing counts. It is a way of thinking. We have to change that. And patriarchy is strengthening if you don't do it. And
Yeah, that is what I felt
yeah.
yesterday. They are giving a different theory. We have been talking about Manu and how Manu is being really working without as unwritten law, but still people are. There is one on the chat box saying, "I write poems on women's issues." Can you just share one? Yeah. I am not able to recognize the name. Can you?
Yes, hello, I'm Nutan Saravagi.
Yeah.
And poetry comes a bit easy to me. I don't know if that's really contributing practically in any way, but whatever my feelings are, I try to put it in verse form. But I don't know if you'll understand my poetry. If you want, I can put it in the chat box. Or would you want, because they're kind of long and you might get bored. So
Okay. Share there, and you can just share the gist of it. What is the content of it, so that we will get at least understand what is it. You can share the poem, but still, if you.
Okay, I'll just read it then quickly, because I've written one on the corona about the migrant workers. So maybe I could read that, which is, as they trudge in hopes nullified, feeling so deep, do we even feel their strife? With tears in their eyes, hunger pants in the long, dark, dreary night, in the tearing rain, in a pain that never cries, dry-eyed, wondering if this nightmare will ever end, as they walk endless miles, eating up their life, to the shouts of "distance yourself" against police lathi charges, yet unfaltering, taking valiant strides, unhearing, uncaring of their life. Do they even have a choice to reach their villages in it to survive? Displaced from their jobs, with no money in their pockets, not knowing what they will do when they arrive, to be greeted by their loved ones with pain in their eyes. If this is life, God, give me another life. to ask, was it my life? Why this pandemic pandemonium? Me strikes. Did I do anything wrong? I only gave my life for your life. Now in me you ride astride, killing me even before the corona eats me alive. Thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, covered the whole of the migration.
Yeah.
Someone wanted to ask.
Yeah, please do ask question.
Thank you so much, ma'am. My name is Haisuddin, currently doing my PhD from Department of Women's Studies in Tezpur University. So as a student and as a researcher, I wanted to present a paper on women's contribution in peacemaking process. But so far, there is no much book or materials that I go deep into my studies and present a paper. So, for a scholar like me, a new researcher like me, what should be my approach to produce a good work on women's contribution? Like, ma'am, you have mentioned about the Naga women, Naga Mothers Association in Manipur and even in Nagaland about your contribution, and they have been playing a very crucial role in negotiating and in a peace process. So, what is your take on that, and what should a researcher, a new scholar like me, should approach in our studies?
I think we continue from where we were saying just now that women went together when they in solidarity they work. And this is what happened, what the Mira Paivis did. But then you know what the end is of the Mira Paivis. There has been a lot of pressure on them to shut house. But you know, as long as they work during the conflict, they created so much of, it was not solidarity, the kind of situation they created was the peace that they've created around themselves and within their households and try to bring in the all the people together. That is what matters. And I think if you have to work on peace research, one of the easiest way and the best way of doing it, which women's studies has been doing for a long time, is to listen to voices, see what they're saying, hear from them. I think the best books that have come out on gender studies are some of them are the women who heard those voices and try to create gender equality and equity. Do you belong to Manipur?
Yes. Yes, I'm from Manipur, ma'am.
Okay. This Professor Leban is there. He does a lot of work on peace.
Okay.
He also teaches sometimes at Manipur University. You can talk to him. He does extraordinary work. But I have friends in the Naga Mothers. They are doing also. You can write to me. You can take my email and write to me, anyone who wants to.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. Yeah.
You're welcome. Shall we? Are there any questions or shall we close now? Mani? No girls spoke what they think of this. I sent you my email.
There is a question in the chat box, Asha.
Yeah, I just saw it. How to deal with gender issues, which has community religious ideologies, which has rigid gender codes, especially at the level of. But this is always there. It's nothing new. It's all the time. And those who deal with women's studies know that this has been our biggest issue that has been raised and biggest barrier to peace. Because when I talk about ideology, I was talking about peace ideology. So, there are certain things, religious can also be peaceful. And I have many friends who are practicing religion, they practice religion. But I don't see that situation of conflict all the time within them. If there are people in a leadership position who fight one group and against another, they're doing it for their own power. They're not doing it for you or for the people or for the whom they work for. It is their own power, because patriarchy is power and control. And that is what happens in any religious ideology which has rigid gender codes, because they're controlling you, they're controlling, and